If your hip exercises are not working, you're in the right place. I've been treating hip pain for over 20 years, and for a long time, I gave the same exercises everyone gives. Clamshells, glute bridges, hip flexor stretches, all that jazz. And then I started noticing something that didn't make sense. Women were doing everything right. They were consistent, disciplined, they were putting in the work. And instead of getting better, they got worse. So I started asking different questions. What if the problem is not the person and their changes in the hip joint, but the exercises and the approach to treat hip pain in general? And what I found completely changed how I treat hip pain today. My name is Marit. I'm a physical therapist specialized in chronic hip pain. I have helped hundreds of women to break free from chronic pain cycle by addressing the root issue, not just treating the symptoms. And only after experiencing my own hip pain, I realized that there are so much more effective ways to treat hip pain than just glute strengthening or stretching exercises. Because the issue is not just what you're doing, it is what your body is doing underneath all of this without you even noticing. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. So let's start here. What your body is actually doing is gripping. It's clenching through the hips, the deep rotators, the glutes, sometimes even the abs and mid-back muscles, just trying to create some stability in your body. And this happens because your pelvis is not supported and you have some imbalances going on in your body. So instead of moving freely, it holds. And over time, that gripping becomes your new normal. And that's where the deep buttock tightness comes from. That groin pinch when you sit or squat, and that stiffness when you stand up and take your first steps. Your hip loses range of motion and it starts feeling stiff all the time. And because your muscles are gripping for stability, nothing ever really relaxes. And here's the part most people miss. That gripping is not really the root of the problem. It's your body's solution to a deeper issue. And if you don't address that, anything you do on the top of it will keep feeding the same cycle. Now let's talk about this a little bit more. Exercises like glute bridges are not bad exercises, but your body has figured out how to do them without using the muscles you're trying to target, which is usually the glute max muscles here. Because if your pelvis is not stabilized properly, your glutes can't get in the position to do their job at all. Instead of this position creates a perfect alignment for other muscles to work. These are your pocket muscle, the TFL, that will take over. Your hip flexors jump in to support the hip into the socket, and lower back tightness gets higher and SI joint becomes more reactive. And the exercises and the reps get done, but the muscles you think you're training are barely involved. It's like plugging your phone into charger that looks fine, but nothing is actually charging. And here's the problem. You don't feel that this is happening, which is why you keep doing and thinking that you're doing the right thing. Now, let's connect the dots. When that femur sits forward in the socket due to deep hip rotator tightness or due to your pelvis alignment, every single step you take or every single squat you do, every time you sit down or pick something off the floor, you're simply loading the front of that hip joint. That happening over and over again. And that's what creates that pinching feeling in the groin, that irritation and inflammation, and the aching pain that just keeps building. This is not your age or the normal degeneration of the hip joint. This is actually a biomechanical issue in your body. And here's where most women get stuck. They think the pain means something is damaged, but in many cases, it's just the joint being loaded in a wrong position again and again. Now, this is important because this is where things start going in the wrong direction. So you're doing the glute bridges, clamshells, squats, and you're stretching your hip flexors and all the things you've been told to do. But you're doing them on the top of a body that's already gripping and already out of alignment and using compensations to get through the day. So instead of fixing the problem, you're actually reinforcing it. You're training your body to grip harder, to compensate more, to stay in that same folded pattern. And that's why you feel relief sometimes, but then the pain comes back stronger. And this is where a lot of women kind of start blaming themselves, like, I must not be doing enough, or I must be doing it wrong. No, you've just jumped to do too much too quickly before you fix the foundation. If this sounds familiar and makes sense to you, and you're realizing why nothing has worked so far, I put together a free webinar where I break this down step by step. What's actually driving your hip pain and what needs to change first before any exercise will work. You can grab the link to the free webinar in the description below. Also, remember to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos that will help you to figure out your hip pain. There are 3 signs I see over and over again. First, exercise makes your hip pain worse, not better. Even the right exercises flare things up. Second, rest helps a little bit. The pain comes right back and when you start moving again. And third, stretching gives you maybe 10 minutes of relief and then the tightness returns. And that is because those muscles are not just tight, they are also weak. They are tight and weak because they are working overtime. They are holding and gripping and trying to stabilize. Muscle that is constantly holding is not a strong muscle. It's a muscle that gets sore and painful and even tighter when you try to strengthen it. And that's why glute strengthening in this case backfires often and makes your symptoms simply worse. So what do you do instead? This is where almost every program gets it backwards. Before you strengthen anything, you have to change the pelvis position and unclench your butt muscles. Your pelvis needs to move again. Your body needs to learn how to relax that constant gripping, and your femur needs to sit better in the socket. This is not about pushing harder. It's about getting your body in the position where the right muscles can actually turn on and work properly. Then, and really only then, you build strength. And when that happens, everything starts to feel better and more stabilized in your body. And in a second, I'll give you a simple way to check if your body is doing this right now. I want to walk you through a quick 2-step check to see if your deep hip rotators are actually gripping. So first, stand up and stand with your feet under the hips. Do a few squats and see if one of the knees is actually pushing further forward or out compared to the other one. If that happens, that side is most likely gripping. Then sit down on a chair. Make sure your pelvis is all the way back in the seat and you're sitting straight. Does it look like one knee is again a little bit further forward than the other one? If that's a yes, that side of the femur might be sitting further forward in the socket due to deep hip rotator gripping or even just the pelvic alignment issue. So here's the bottom line. The exercises you've been doing are not necessarily wrong exercises. They are just not right for your body right now because your body simply might not have the access to the muscles to contract right, or the deep hip rotator gripping needs to be taken care of first before jumping into the glute strengthening. Once you fix that, those same exercises often start working and feeling good again. And it's not because the exercise need to be different, but because your body can finally handle them right. If this gave you a completely different way to understand your hip pain, make sure you subscribe, because I'm going to keep breaking this down so you can finally get out of the cycle and get back to moving without constantly thinking about your hip.